Hi, everybody. I'm Melanie Russell. I'm the Executive Director of ToLabor, which is an international doula training and certifying organization. You are listening to ToRAISE Questions Doula Podcast, and I'm really glad you're here. We are here today with a very exciting guest, Cece Peace. Hi, Cece.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. Cece is a mom of four, a former teacher, and now is a practicing birth doula and a childbirth educator, both with A Brighter Birth. And what else? What other hats do you wear, Cece?
We homeschool.
It's a big one.
We homeschool. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot to do while doing with other things as well.
Yes. On-call life.
All the time. Yeah. Cece's here to talk today about a topic that is very broad. So we're going to try to rein it in a little bit. And I'm sure this could be a four-parter series that maybe we'll come back to. But the topic that we're going to talk today about is when things go awry in the birth that you are attending as a doula. And that could be through the prenatal time. It could be, I think what we're really going to dig into today is in the actual birth space. Could also happen in the postpartum journey. But I think when we were trying to decide what the topic was going to be, we both had sort of experiences, little snippets of stories that we couldn't hold back while we were talking about it. So I think this broad topic of, you work so hard and long with your client to develop this relationship, to create I'm going to use the word birth plan. I'm going to put lots of quotes around it though, because we typically don't like to use the word plan. Expectations, desires, wishes. But when that really goes out the window and things happen in that birth room that feel out of your control, feel out of your client's control, how do you help your client process that? How do you process that? That's sort of what we're going to be talking about today. Yeah.
Big stuff.
Big stuff. So, Cece, give us an idea of kind of where you're coming from with birth work. How did you get started in this? How many births have you attended? And generally, what's your philosophy on when you take a client on? How does that work?
Yeah. So I am the oldest of 6 siblings from a mixed family. So I have been told I'm bossy and, like to step into that being in charge, taking care role. So when family members, friends, myself, started to have babies, I loved learning and reading about it. That kind of came naturally. Also, former teacher, so love to learn, love to help others learn, even when they may not. You need to know this. So I just kind of fell into birth work naturally. And after the birth of my first is when I decided to stay home. I left the classroom and then kind of stumbled into birth work. Actually, my husband encouraged me to take training. And so I Googled training and there was one coming up with you and ToLabor. And then I like to say that all the windows and doors opened and aligned perfectly for me to find clients and mentors and folks to work with. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then generally, this is one of my least favorite questions in the interview with clients is, what is your philosophy for birth? How much time do we have?
Good practice.
Right. Yeah. Generally, birth works, right? There's a reason that humans exist and people continue to have babies. But it's making
birth
sure.
Works.
Yeah, it works.
Mm-hmm. Birth works. I need a t-shirt with that
Birth
on there.
works.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means you have to step out of your own way. You have to ask a provider to step out of the way or be more hands-off. And it's, how are you going to ask questions in the moment? So you mentioning when things go awry, I think it's twofold. So maybe here's our 2 parts.
Yeah.
In the moment, how do you process? How do you make decisions? and decide something that's potentially really hard and not what you want. And according to plan, it's not what we wrote down. And then afterwards, that second part is processing, holding space for yourself as a doula when you witness something that maybe is really hard. How do you help your clients sit with that, wrestle with that? I don't like to shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
But there are times where you do have to enter into those conversations with clients and their support people of maybe we could have done something different, but let's hold some space. Let's ask questions to providers. So I think those are the two big parts that stand out to me is in the moment processing and decision making, and then holding space afterwards and supporting yourself and your clients.
Absolutely. Give us an example of when things go awry in the birth space and this could be a real life example, maybe how you handled it afterward with yourself and with the client. What do you have?
We talked about this before, and it's a hard one, and it's pretty rare for a doula to witness, I think. But the big thing that I've been wrestling with is an episiotomy that happened in a birth kind of recently. And, there's this, I don't want to say some red flags, but there are some certain things that were happening. And then it's like, okay, this is where we've ended up. In the moment, this, was presented to my client in a really compassionate way. But it still is hard to have labored all night long. And we were in a scenario where this client had been pushing for a lot of hours, and there were some signs that we needed to make a decision to help this baby navigate. So
some questions while you're going through this. So was this client a primip, a first time?
First timer.
Okay. And was this client with with an OB practice, a midwife practice? Okay. And was this a midwife practice that your client was able to get to know ahead of time? It wasn't just an on-call practice?
Yes.
Okay.
So my client had prenatal care with the midwives.
All right. And did this client take classes and do all of the things to prepare for birth, as we really try to talk our clients into?
Yes. So this was actually what we would probably say is a dream client.
Yeah.
Aligned with an incredible birth team, had done the work, listened to podcasts, taken an out of hospital childbirth education class. Thank you. Yes. Those are things that are in my contract. I really encourage you to align yourself with those things. Right. We can't always hold them to that. We try to. But this client had done all the things.
I call that stacking the odds in your favor.
Sure.
Really trying to prepare as best as possible. But then obviously, and definitely in the case of this story, it seems like even when your client does, quote unquote, everything right, still, we can't control a lot of the aspects of birth. We can't control their anatomy. We can't control we can try to control the baby's position, right? But sometimes we don't have the information of what position baby is in. Sometimes we don't have a provider with the experience or skill set to truly turn a baby. And sometimes the baby is reluctant. Even if we've done all of those things, the baby still is the one to make up their mind. And as you and I both know, mothers to many children, we don't have control of them.
Yes.
Even at that young age.
Those are the babies that come out and doula Cece, or I'll say Aunt Cece sometimes, you're grounded. Yes. Your parents can lift the restriction when they want, but
yeah. Yes, this was my first baby. He still should be grounded.
Grounded baby.
Yeah. Okay. So she did everything that you encouraged her to do, had a great relationship with her provider, how was the actual birth? The labor?
Worked really hard all night long, utilized hydrotherapy. So we got in the tub. She was also unmedicated. So moving freely. We had a good playlist going, aromatherapy, checking all the boxes.
Yep.
When it was time to push, labored down, tried to breathe through that a little bit, and then pushed for a really long time. And that is when it was discovered that baby was not in an optimal position. So we tried to do lots of different positions, taking a break from pushing, but it's kind of hard when you're unmedicated and a baby's just sitting in your pelvis working with those contractions. And we think that baby got themselves wedged in a what's called a military presentation. So their little noggin wasn't tucked.
So sorry. My phone is going crazy. Hold on. I'm just going to like put it over here.
Yeah, that's why we do not disturb.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do it. Perfect. Okay.
Hard for doulas. We don't.
God.
What is do not disturb?
What is do not disturb? It's scary. Okay. Where were we?
Military presentation. This baby got wedged.
Okay. Start off there again.
Yeah. So baby had gotten wedged with their head not tucked. So not in an optimal position, not the most narrow.
So chin not flexed up instead. Okay. So then we don't have the narrowest portion of the head, the occiput presenting, which is very tough.
Very tough. Provider midwife even attempted to get baby to tuck their head.
Okay.
Just wasn't happening. Pushed in all the positions, attempted to rest in lots of different positions, and it got to a point where we actually had 2 midwives. Forgot that. One of the midwives was finishing their schooling, was finishing the number of births they have to attend till they can be on their own.
Okay.
So we were working with 2 midwives, essentially, very, very experienced, and a newer one that actually has a lot of experience in the
just
birth
doing her
world.
orientation. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So had all of those noggins put together, trying to figure out this baby's noggin, navigating through the pelvis. So it got to the point where after, I want to say, close to 5 hours of pushing, it was time to get the baby born. Midwife mentioned that she could see signs that tearing would happen in a not so pleasant way internally first, which I guess can be a sign that they're looking for, and made the offer to cut an episiotomy.
Interesting. Because, we also hear sometimes OBs use that same sort of phrase in a situation where we haven't tried anything. We haven't been pushing for very long, where someone will say, instead of tearing, I can just make this incision right here and we can have a baby. Where in classes, as childbirth educators, we talk a lot about, well, we'd rather tear. We'd rather have that time, that natural jagged tear versus the deeper straight up and down or to the side incision, which could potentially tear further, which could be harder to heal, which could open up again for a second baby. But it sounds like, and when we talk about it in that way, it's much more of a sort of manipulation tactic to finish this job quickly. But it sounds like this provider gave it all they had, with 2 of them in the room. All of the different tricks were used, and something was telling her that she needed to be the one to create the space rather than wait even longer for the body. Okay, so the episiotomy was cut.
After numbing was administered.
Oh,
they had time to do that.
Yeah,
yes.
that's great. Okay. Because too, there's a lot of talk about this, pressure episiotomy, where just the pressure of the baby being pushed against that perineum is so intense that the school of thought is they're not going to feel it anyway because of the pressure of this baby. The Bradley method talks about that a lot. And I love that in this case, even in that moment of, okay, this is an option, and clearly your client agreed to it, gave her consent.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then was given the care to numb that area. So some lidocaine was administered.
Yes.
Okay. So then episiotomy was cut.
Yes.
And how much longer until baby was born?
It was only a few minutes. Baby's head. Yeah.
Isn't that just like, it's so tough.
So tough.
It's so tough. I've had experiences too with people, you know, inductions or laboring so hard for so long. And then a C-section is brought into the room, and then it's lots of tears and lots of discussion and making decisions and going back and forth. And then we get in there and 8 minutes later, the baby's out. And then everyone's like, why didn't we do this 16 hours ago? You know? But that's where that whole hindsight is 2020 phrase really, I think, comes into play here. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So after the fact, how did your client feel about it?
She was very relieved to have met her sweet baby.
Yes.
And that baby was tolerant and cool as a cucumber the whole time. Never had to worry about providers pressuring because baby wasn't tolerating labor well.
That's great. It doesn't sound like any fear-mongering or manipulation tactics happened here at all.
I think there was an OB on the outside that had said, your clock is ticking.
Right. The midwives might have felt the pressure.
Yeah. And I think that's where it was, okay, we're approaching hour 5 to 6 of pushing. But fast forward, I think my client really struggled with thinking through the whole trajectory of labor. What could I have done differently that might have changed things? Specifically staying home longer, having me come to her house to labor for a little bit, which I think is something maybe we could dive into as well. There are often times, especially with a primip, that they get in their own head, and sometimes that anxiety and fear of the unknown when a little bit of intensity comes in, and we all feel it differently. I can't judge how you're laboring and how you're feeling. I can do my best from the outside. But potentially, my client was wondering, if I had stayed home, if you had come to labor with me, would it have changed this
and
thing?
that offer was given, right? And she chose to go right in and forego the home doula support. And I think that happens a lot with first-timers too, because they think as soon as things really start to get hard, because as we know, early labor can be so long. And then as soon as things really start to feel more intense and these contractions are on top of each other, they think, oh my gosh, this baby's coming at any moment. We just got to go. We're just going to meet you there. And then also people have this idea that, well, if we go to the hospital, we have a baby. When it's just like, no, when you go to the hospital, you're just in the hospital doing the same shit you were doing at home.
I also think they sometimes might say, oh, certainly the rules don't apply to me. I'm going to be the one that has a faster birth, or that things hit the ground running faster, if you will.
I'm going to be early. I'm going to have a swift birth, which we
wish that for you.
We wish that for everyone.
It's also kind of, I think, hard for clients to wrap their brains around the terminology, even of active labor, right? Like the terminology and when you're dilated a certain amount. And I say, no, it's not that you weren't actively laboring before.
Right.
It's just we don't. I'm like, just take the numbers and the terminology away. We're gonna process and think through what you're feeling in real time. But when that intensity shift happens, potentially when you're crossing that threshold or precipice into active labor, big hormone rush, a lot of anxiety. It's like, oh, we have to go. This baby's coming. It's like, And I say to my clients, I never want to not negate, but I never want to go against your intuition or your gut, because there's a reason we were given that. And I think that's also a really beautiful skill that we get to hone as moms. So I didn't want to say, oh, I don't trust your gut. I don't trust your body, because I do trust your body. But also, it's a two-way street. Trust in the doula that you hired potentially, or call the midwives to say, what do you think about me laboring at home a little bit longer, instead of making that decision kind of on your own.
It's such a balancing act as the doula in this space of, I would like to come to your house and labor with you, but you want me to meet you in the hospital. And I know it's a little too early for that. So that's definitely a dance that we do with clients often. And I think having that prep work, and it sounds like this client did, of the classes, of the, the one-on-one appointments, even, we do a group prenatal with folks, and we really try to hammer that home with the rest and the trying to tamp back those early contractions, or really just putting yourself in denial.
Do not engage. Do not engage the early labor.
Don't plug into those early contractions. We have everything, all of our branded Do Life stickers and everything that we give out to people. And still, when that labor rolls in, it's like all that info flies out the door, myself included, with my first labor. And I had a midwife, I had a doula, I had a very supportive partner. I was still like, I got to go. I don't care what anyone is saying. I don't care. I want to be in the hospital. Or it was a birthing center at that point, and I was 2 centimeters dilated. It's like, Melanie. So you said something else too in there that I wanted to touch on, that I was just, as I was scrolling this morning, saw a post from Carriage House Birth, who we love in New York. And they're a group of doulas, and they teach classes and doula trainings and all of that good stuff. And they have a post about how sometimes it can be really harmful, this phrase, trust your body, because clearly we want people to trust their body. We want people to trust their babies. We trust the physiology of birth. And then what happens when something like this occurs? When they did everything right, they did trust their body, they trusted their team, and they still ended up with an intervention that they really didn't want. And so I think as doulas, it's really powerful for us to explore that with clients, where you can have this, this trust, this innate belief in yourself that you can do this, but then you also, in the same breath, have to have grace for yourself and for your body and for your baby, and be open to all of the different possibilities that can unfold within a birth story, because we don't ever know what's happening. And I think that's kind of part of the excitement of why we do this work, right? We all have to be a little bit crazy to have a job that we don't know when we're going to work, how long we will be there, what the energy is going to be. Right.
Who our coworkers will be.
Who we're going to, yeah, exactly. Who we're going to be with, what our client is going to be like. I mean, we've known our clients in their regular day-to-day life, but we have never known them in this sometimes chaotic, very intense situation. And so a lot comes out there. So I think that's important as we delve more into kind of how to process with clients and how to process within ourselves when interventions do come into play, that we're only in control of so much. And this message of, if you just trust your body, then everything will be fine, really is a disservice to people. Making those decisions, your birth team, your birth location, the birth prep that people do, that's really all that people have control of. And then they have to, at some point, kind of throw their arms up in the sky and say, all right, I surrender.
Right.
I accept this. I know I did my best. And maybe next time will be different. Or if there is no next time, how am I going to get to a place that I'm okay with what did happen?
One of our favorite midwives said a quote to me during my third birth and afterwards as we processed, is that birth works, but sometimes Mother Nature is not so nice, not so kind. My sweet little third baby came out asynclitic.
Yes.
And so long about transition, it felt very different than my previous labors, and I lost it.
That's so unfair. Third baby.
Something's not right. This hurts in a different way. It didn't feel like hard work. It felt like excruciating pain. And my midwife did something to help fix that. She actually internally helped hold my baby's head straight.
Mhm.
So then she could engage and come all the way through.
Mhm.
And I said, well, what would have happened if I'd been with a different provider or a different midwife even? And she said some providers would have called it. They would have said, that's a mal-presenting baby. You're suffering. Let's call it for a C-section.
Yeah.
You could have suffered for 3 hours and then they would have called it. There are some midwives, she said, that don't believe in intervening in that way because, we're trusting the baby and trusting the body to present how they need to present. And if it's not working, it's not working. So I'm very thankful that she did intervene. But that has stuck with me is that birth works. But sometimes Mother Nature, sometimes our babies come out in a funky position and we need to do some things to help them out if we can, which doesn't always work, as we know, but yeah.
Yeah. The same midwife who is Nancy Giglio. She is just a wealth of wisdom, a practicing midwife for many, 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 many years. No one really knows how long. But yes, my midwife as well. She also said something to me regarding this topic about interventions versus intercessions, which I really liked. Thinking about how sometimes these interventions that take place during birth, and someone can argue that her putting her hand inside you and manipulating your baby's position was an intervention, but one that helped you continue on that path. And so what she sort of termed that is an intercession. It is not a disruption of what the hormones, what the natural progression is trying to, get to, but it is actually a tool to help. And sometimes an epidural can be an intercession. Sometimes an episiotomy can be an intercession. Sometimes a C-section can be an intercession instead of an intervention.
Right.
Where, the goal is always, I hate to say this, healthy mom, healthy baby. Of course, we think the goal is a non-traumatized parent and baby. And a lot of times that can be really confused and represented in a way to, again, manipulate someone's decision-making during that process. But sorry, it's okay. In your client's story, was she able to, at some point, get to that place where, yes, she's relieved that her baby was born? Was she also able to have some pride in herself of all of the hard work that she did to get to that point, and then also be grateful for, and I know grateful is like such a hard word because it's like such a tough experience, but be grateful for those 5 hours of pushing that she did have the space and time that she was given to try, and then to have that midwife step in at that point with such compassion and offer her an intercession.
I think it took some time because of that malpositioned baby presented some other hurdles in feeding and being comfortable. That baby had a lot of trauma to their body. Being, I think, wedged like that needed some good body work and support in that regard. But I think she's turned a corner and feeling like, okay, this is what needed to happen. And this was hard, but I can still hold those things together. Like this was really hard and not what I wanted for my body or my birth, but I also am such a rock star. Like every time I talk, if we exchange things on Instagram, I'm like, you're amazing. Don't forget that. Like you labored for so long and you pushed really hard unmedicated for so long. So I think she does have pride, and she has some, I don't know, I guess experience to know that things happen and we might have to about face. We might have to make some decisions. Literally baby needed to about face. Like, come on, fall in line here. I think she's proud and wants something different for next time. I don't think many of us go into birth wanting an episiotomy. right?
No, absolutely not.
So I think she just knows she needs to hold space for the fact that she's a rock star and birthed her baby after all of this hard work, but also knowing it's okay to be like, well, that kind of stunk. I want something different for next time, that's hard to have some of that conflicting emotion around what's supposed to be like the happiest, most joyful thing, which is it's not always just complete joy.
It's hard. It's hard as hell.
Yes.
Yeah, especially those first babies. I think back to my first baby, who's now 21, and his labor was 46 hours long, transfer from a birthing center to a hospital at 9 centimeters, dilated because his heart rate went in the tank for 3 contractions. And there was meconium in the fluid. And so everyone was a bit nervous, and ended up with an epidural and forceps, and was able to advocate my way out of an episiotomy, but still ended up with a vaginal birth. And so the second time, I definitely had similar feelings, I think, that to your client that she shared with you, just about, being proud of herself, but also disappointed in the way that things unfolded. And it did force me to do things a little bit differently, even though I felt like I had done everything right the first time. I had a doula. I took an out-of-hospital birth class. I had an out-of-hospital midwife practice. I still couldn't control my baby's position. And I couldn't control, even though we tried lots of things. He also had a true knot tied in his cord, which is what they thought when my water broke. He dropped significantly, and then it pulled that cord taut for a few contractions. But then, thank goodness for Warden's jelly, which is nice and slippery and makes that cord just kind of come loose again. And so then he was fine and recovered great when we were in the hospital, of course. And so the second one, I had at home, and I had no interventions, and our midwife, did a lot of work with me prenatally on undoing the story that I had told myself from the first one.
Right.
And so that might be part of this client's journey with the next one, because as we know, when people have a second baby, it's so hard to detach that second story from the first story. They think, that's how it happened. This is how I have babies now. This is the way that it works. And that's not true. They can be completely night and day different.
For sure.
So I think that's probably going to be part of your work with her next time when she calls you again for the second one. So how have you been able to process this, and how has this one specific birth, or, I know this is just one example, but this idea of having things happen that are out of your control or just totally opposite of what your client wanted. How did you walk out of that birth? And then how do you feel about it today?
I think I have learned, and I will always be learning. I think that's what makes a good doula, is someone that's not scared to ask questions and not be set in their ways, open to things, having hard conversations. So the first thing I did was, even though it was end of shift, actually the providers stayed over by, I think, close to 2 hours to be there for this client, so that there didn't have to be another kind of disruption. I chased him down. I'm shameless. I'm like, wait, I have questions.
Yes.
What could we do differently? And we debriefed in the moment. And then, because I attend that, location frequently, hey, can we go back to that? There's a couple of doula friends that give me a hard time because, like, do you just talk to everyone? And I'm, how? Yes. I want to build relationships, and I want providers and nurses to know me and trust me as a team member and a team player. The team being my clients. I play for that team, not for the system. But I chased him down and had questions, and then continued to ask those questions. But also sometimes the hard question of what what would you tell me as a doula? Do you think I could have done anything differently? Even if it's
Great
something
question to ask.
I don't want to hear, or something
Yeah.
that maybe I could have done differently or better. It's just not being stuck in that rut of, well, I did all I could do, washing my hands of that scenario. So always being open to that conversation and really pursuing those relationships. That's super important to me. So I've continued to talk about that. I also have to lean on some doula friends and mentors. I've really placed a lot of value in that, and not being scared to say, hey, Melanie, I know you wear 5 million hats, but I had a traumatic birth, or, somebody else. But really taking some time to process that, as lovely as my sister and my husband and all the people are, it's different than someone that lives it and experiences that and attends birth as well. So I think it's important to hold space and process through, and even say, hey, here's what happened. I don't need any words from you. I just need to get it all out.
Yeah.
I just need to spit it all out and let someone else hear it and hold that space. But then also going back to that client and saying, hey, we might have some work to do and some undoing, some unlearning and relearning, but also giving yourself lots of grace. I think the other part of that maybe will come with a couple hundred more births under my belt. I'm at, I think, close to 160 now. I need to go back and look at my stats, but
all great tips that you're giving yourself. What about moving forward?
Moving forward, I think looking back, and I think I said this to you before, when I'd attended 10 births or just my own versus 50 versus 100, I'm such a different doula. And I think that's a really beautiful, hard thing. I also think there's a difference between Cece attending 160 births, I think I'm at, and Melanie's, I think your last count you told us was 700 or something crazy like that.
Yeah, 706, I think, right now.
God. That's exciting. That's amazing. I think there's a difference there in honing some of my own skills and boundaries. Clients texting you after hours for things that really should not be texting. I think you probably are better at setting that boundary and maybe putting some folks in their place than I am. But moving forward, looking back, I would like to try and implement a stronger voice of, hey, I hear you. I see and hear what's happening. I'll be to your house in 30 minutes and let's touch base and then make the decision. Not making decisions in the middle of a really hard contraction. Let's settle for a moment.
Yes.
Let's take a deep breath. Let that one go. So I think maybe honing some of those skills or practicing my, we have our mom voice, my teacher voice.
Yes.
I need to, maybe I can implement that a little bit more with some folks. Hopefully coming up of, I hear that you want to go in. I think we have some time. I'm not sure we're ready to roll yet.
And who knows if that would have changed the trajectory of this birth. But if that's something that you both came to, that was something that you both wish that you had tried, then I think within the prep work, just having your clients expect you to come, something I say in those prenatals, the one-on-one prenatals we do, I say, I really like to lay my eyes on my first timers before we make the decision to go in. So that means even if I'm just coming over to help you get everything in the car, help you get her in the car, I will absolutely do that.
Drag our feet, maybe.
Right. Or maybe it is me coming over and helping you stay for a couple more hours and work on that positioning at home and really get to a little bit of a further, stronger pace of this labor before we decide to come in. I think those, boundaries, what you call them, or just kind of framework, that framework of how you doula your clients, it really, it changes per client. It really does, because that's also a fine line that you're walking of, I hear you, I respect your decision, but I want to do something different. So you really have to be very open and receptive to what they want to do while reminding them of what you talked about when they weren't feeling these contractions.
Right.
Yeah.
First timers.
It's so tough, but it's also so exciting and incredible to witness such a transformation of a couple going from 2 to 3, or from just, the birther going from 1 to 2. That, I've tried to take less first timers in these last couple of years, but I still have a few on my calendar. And it's always just really exciting when that baby is born.
It's very special.
Yeah. Well, Cece, thank you so much for being here. I think we will definitely have you back to delve more into this, because
To be continued.
Yes, to be continued. We'll talk more about the challenges of when things go awry. Thanks for listening. So you can find us on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Please subscribe, follow us, comment. Please reach out via email, melanie@tolabor.com. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your episode ideas. We want to have you on. So please reach out to us and let us know what you think. All right. Thanks for listening. This episode was recorded at Vera House, produced by Perry Young and Mike Metzger, and special thanks to my husband, Jared Russell, for his lighting tweaks and input all along the way.